Alright, in the first video we looked at the first 4 steps of the classical essay arrangement. So now we'll finish out the rest of the 7 and talk about what are some options after we've got all those 7 laid out. So, step 5 is the confirmation. And again, we're 5 steps into the essay before we get to the point where we're supporting our own claims. This seems a little weird to some people initially, because we're used to just jumping right in with our own standpoints. But again, we've got a pretty developed sense of what the overall issue is by the time we get here. So this is the entire section of every single reason why you're right. And so it gives you, again, some conditions to consider in this component. Step 6 is a digression. And this one is considered optional too, but after you've made all of your arguments previously in step 5, most of those are going to, in step 5, are going to rest on logic. So step 6 is designed to pull in some pathos or some emotional stories, some reasons to emotionally connect with your reader, to illustrate one specific example of why your story is important, who this argument affects in the real world, that sort of thing. So it's just kind of a break in tone and lets you illustrate the situation in real world examples. And then finally in step 7, we can probably see this coming, the conclusion. So we'll practice some effective conclusion techniques, but essentially what you want to do is don't just leave things sitting there at the end of the paper. You know, it's usually a good idea to give some kind of call to action to your readers. You know, now that they are convinced that you're right, what do we need to do about it? What can we do about it to make the world a better place in your point of view? If you can somehow link back to the ideas of the introduction, that gives a very satisfying feel to our reader, so that we get the sense that we've come full circle. But again, we want to end strongly and with conviction. Okay. So again, we've got these 7 steps, and again, they're not single paragraphs, they're chunks of text. And so here's just a really big ballpark of what some of these pieces are going to, how long some of them are going to take you. And again, you know, some you may go on the short side with some and the long side with others. But on the most conservative side, we're looking at 9.5 pages. On the more extreme end, we're looking at 17 pages long. And it's not ridiculous to do that with these 7 steps. So that puts you really nicely in the requirements for this particular course. And if you like the 7 steps, but you're not quite sure that you like the order that they're in, there are always ways to move them around and to reorder them in a way that you think seems more appropriate. You know, nobody says that you have to wait until step 3 to actually give your thesis. If you want to open with that, go for it. Or if you want to save your thesis until much later in the paper after you've made the refutation and the confirmation, and then save your thesis after that point, that's perfectly fine too. So again, just you may want to consider drafting the 7 separate pieces and then literally cutting and pasting and playing around with it and seeing what seems the most appropriate for your particular argument. And nobody says you have to do all 7. If you want to leave something out, that's fine. Or maybe you can create your own new section and we'll come up with a jazzy Latin term for it or Greek term for it and impress our friends with your new section. So anyway, I hope this gives you some ideas as you move forward into the discovery draft and the outline assignment coming up.